Hi, everyone. Hey, it looks like it's 4:30. We've got quite a group on for this evening. So glad to see you all. Thanks for joining. Let's do a little bit of a roll call. It looks like as people are logging in, I'm keeping my email open here. Last week we did have a bit of there was people in a couple different waiting rooms. And so I just want to make sure that we're all in the same waiting room this evening. So I've got my email up over here. So sorry if I get some notices, but I didn't want to turn it off in case someone was trying to reach me via email this evening or my phone. And close that so I can see the chat function if anyone sends a chat through. And Louisa and Sarah have their meeting notes going, which we've said in the past is fine with us. So thank you all for doing that. And again, the recording will post in the next day or two after this meeting. We'll have that posted online. Let's go ahead and just let's say who's here tonight so I can take some attendance. And this evening, today was the day of the eclipse all over. So if anyone has an eclipse story to share, let's start this evening off by sharing an eclipse story. And we had as an example, we had mostly cloudy skies here. So we were able to get some peaks of the partial eclipse here through the clouds. I don't know if anyone has a more exciting eclipse story, but maybe you were in a school, maybe some students were trying to look at the eclipse, maybe you saw some shadows that you could see it, whatever it might be. Introduce yourself to say hello. I guess we don't have to introduce ourselves since we know each other, but I'd like you to just say your name, let us know you're here, and an eclipse story of the day if you do. Let's see. Jean, do you mind starting? I see you right at the top of my screen anyway, so.
Whoops, trying to turn the mic on.
Yep,
no,
and we can hear you.
It was cloudy here also, so I watched some of the stuff on TV where it really went dark, and that was fun to see.
Nice. Clifton, how about you next?
Yeah, I'm Clifton Greeley. One of the things that I actually enjoyed hearing is that in another 20 years we get to experience the totality here in Montana. So I guess it's a ways to wait, but I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. Let's see who else is there. We have a little time to look forward to that, I guess, but it'll be pretty fun when it gets here. John, I see you on the screen. Oh, you're still muted. I don't know if you. I can see you
Try
talking.
it there. Check.
There you
Can
go.
hear me there?
Yep.
Eastern Montana, cloudy as all get out today, so we didn't have any chance to observe it. It just was, I guess, shadowy, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Not so fun for today, but maybe the clouds will bring a little rain, and we always know we need rain. So we'll try to look at that bright side. Catherine, how about you?
No eclipse story today, except for I was glad I did not fly out of Tennessee today and I flew out yesterday, or it could have been a nightmare getting to the airport.
Oh, yes, I think that's a good call. Nice silver lining there.
Yes.
Sure. Good. Well, good to see you. Let's see. I see Sarah.
Hello. I don't have any fun story. I was in the basement office, and so I've seen the light and dark a little bit, but that's about it. So
Yeah. Being in the partial here in Montana, we don't maybe get as direct fun as some of the other places and around for sure. How about Chaz?
I didn't see anything too crazy, but I did try to take a picture of the sun, and there, you know how it makes a little ghost? It made a ghost that was a picture, like I could see the moon, or that the moon had covered part of the sun. So I did see that.
Perfect. Well, that's pretty exciting. A different event than we usually can see. So that's great. Let's see. Looks like Sue, I've seen that you logged in.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Sue. We were just sharing anyone if they had a fun Eclipse story to share. We were giving everyone a moment to share that out.
Oh, I was just watching it. I watched it on my phone when it came on, like, I don't know, CNN or something. They were in Mazatlan, the people. So it was kind of fun to watch them get people were crying, and
Oh,
it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
it is really, it is very impressive to be in totality for sure. Yeah, I was able to be once in totality and it was pretty wonderful, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. All right, let's see who else we have on here. I think it looks like Kira Moog is on. Do you want to say a quick hello, Kira?
Hello.
And
I'm
Kira's
just
our
listening to my kiddos in the background talk about their eclipse day too.
Nice. So they were able to see a little bit during the school day today, which is great.
Yes, when they both got in the pickup, I asked them how the eclipse was, and simultaneously they were like, cool. So it was a win.
That's good. That's good. Katie Bloodgood, I see you're on as well.
Hi everyone. Yeah, a little cloudy, but the eclipse was nice. I don't think I've had a chance to meet a lot of you guys, but I'm the legislative liaison here at OPI, so glad to join on tonight.
Thanks, Katie. And then I have one person that I would like to introduce you all to, and I see she's on the call. Whitney Williams is here. And I want to introduce you to Whitney because we've talked about how this bill has come with the availability for OPI to hire someone to help with our implementation here at the agency as far as bringing those looking at those applications, getting those contracts back and forth with parents, and then doing the reimbursements. Whitney is our person and she starts officially today in the role, I think, right, Whitney? So if you want to just introduce yourself really quickly to the group, this is our the Education Savings Account Steering Committee, and we're very happy to welcome you here, Whitney. And I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and say hi to our team. You're muted.
My apologies. No, I'm excited to be here and join your guys' team. And I've actually been with OPI for over 8 years. So I did a lot of grant accounting and I was just previously the auditor. So this new role should be fun. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Whitney. I am very excited. Whitney does come to us with a lot of experience. She's really going to help out with the interfacing with the parents with that reimbursement process as this is going along. And she's just going to be a key person to help with this, with families and during this process. So thank you so much, Whitney. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it for our committee members and our OPI support. I do see, I think we have a guest. We have Cheryl on. Cheryl is joining us just to listen in. So welcome, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us. And we will go ahead and go on with our next agenda items. There are no updates on the litigation. It stands the same as it did the last time. So our staff attorney, Rick, is not here to share with us, but I keep it on our agenda so that if there is anything that he needs to share with us, then he has a spot here to do so, but there is no update there. We did have some subcommittee work. They met this within the last week and worked on the application. And Whitney was able to join that meeting as well and kind of talk about some of those application points. And so we have the questions that we've finalized and that our tech team is working on getting them implemented into the format. I want to show those to you all now. We've talked about this a couple of other times at our previous meetings with you all, and our subcommittee really finalized these questions and got this going and ready. And so this is just the sort of overview of the questions. We hope to have we'll have a more finalized one ready to share out with you when that's ready, when the link is ready for this. We're going to get that to you. And hopefully this maybe next week we'll be able to test that. Whitney, you might be able to tell us a little bit more about that timing, but we would like to, if there's a possibility for you all to test, we'll get an email sent out to you and have you do sort of a test for us. If we need that, we're definitely going to send that out to you. So be keeping an eye on your email for that possibility. But these are the application fields that that application will contain: the name of student, the names of the parent or guardian, address, birth date, phone number, email, and the student SSID. Most parents will know what this is. We put sort of not required there simply because sometimes parents might not have it readily available or something, and we don't want that to stop the process if they don't have that SSID right at hand, but hopefully they would be able to get that to us. Then we want them to select in a drop-down their resident school district, or what resident school district they would be going to if they were going into kindergarten, the last Montana public school that they attended. If they're not residing in Montana, then the designated year, check for if applying for upcoming school year. And then, do you intend to return to the public school during the current or upcoming school year? Yes or no? Like what, is it something that you might be out for a part of a year, go back? We want to try to get that through this application just to be aware of. And then this is that determination, and we've talked a lot about it in this meeting, and also we talked a lot about it with the subcommittee. And we've come up with this language, and we think that this is the way to go for determining the eligibility. So to determine if your student is qualified for this program, we are asking students to attach an evaluation report, an IEP, or a private place service plan from the resident school district. And so any one of those three indicate that this student has been identified as IDEA. And in addition, we'll have the drop down of those designations. So in the application, the parent will check off the designations that were in the evaluation report, and that will need to kind of coincide with either the evaluation report, the IEP, or the private service plan. So that way, when Whitney's looking at those applications and determining it, we'll be able to have that little bit of cross-reference and make sure that makes sense. If there are any cases that seem questionable or not certain or we aren't sure about, we talked with our special ed team, and that's where we would bring them in maybe for a quick meeting to discuss and look at something that we had a question about. And just so that you're all aware, that is how we've come to that eligibility. And we think we think that's going to work pretty well for this application process. Then we thought at the bottom we should have maybe just a notification that there is an appeal process if they need it. And then there was a question about having the release of information for a resident school district. And I'm not sure if we need that on this application, or if that's something, if we need more information, we would reach out to the parent and say, hey, could you sign off on this release of information? We need more. What are your thoughts as the steering committee? Would that be something to put on the application as a little checkbox for all, or would it be maybe on an as needed basis? What are your thoughts? I see Clifton kind of nodding, thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that it never hurts to have a release on hand. We sign them when we put the kids in school, and they have them on hand if they ever need to request documents from another school, especially when transferring an IEP.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Okay. We can put that on there, a checkbox then that has that language.
Should there also be something on there letting them know that we notify the school district? Of course, it'll have to be notified because we're going to take money from their budget, but I just that should be on there just so they know.
That's maybe a good idea, Jean. Yeah.
Now I have a couple other questions. One, if they're new to the district, either to the state or having a kindergartner, and the school actually gets their A and B based on last year's number, the school doesn't technically have any money in the bank for them, right? I mean, I know that when the school districts get the money, it's not doesn't have a child's name attached to it, but I'm just saying budget wise, they don't really have any money for a child that didn't attend last year when they were
Yeah.
counted.
Yeah.
So then my
What-
other question is, and then the one about returning to school, I wonder if it makes sense for us to only, because that's a possibility, and we did talk about whether or not you could put your child in, take your child out kind of thing. Maybe we should only have the districts pay a quarter of the money quarterly in
Mhm.
case we go back to the school, so we don't have that whole mess of, well, now they're here, but they spent all their money, or, you know, now how do we get some money back to the school district because they have to hire a teacher or whatever. I'm just wondering if that might be a logistical thing. I don't know how it would work.
Yeah, Jean, that's a great question. And I know, and Whitney, I'm not sure if Whitney is quite up to speed to talk about this. We chatted with this Deanne about this exact thing, and that the payments will go out to schools at certain times. And so, yes, the schools wouldn't get it all at once. It is part of a payment schedule for exactly kind of that. And so I think that we could navigate that, but that's a really good question. Yeah. Yeah. And Clifton, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I had actually came up with a couple of questions when it came to contracts and applications. What's the turnaround time? I know it's speculative, but what's the turnaround time on an application? And then like for planning purposes.
Yes. Oh, goodness. And we were talking with Deanne for that. We were trying to say, and Whitney, do you remember what we chatted about? We just chatted about this in the meeting with Deanne. We were talking about that turnaround time from the contract, from the application to getting the notice and then that contract going. Do you remember what we settled on, Whitney? Because I know we went back and forth a little bit.
Yep, I think we decided on 30 days from the day that the contract was signed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
And then my second question is where it talks about the Social Security ID number. This came up in other states as well. Is this something that's required of just a student, or is it the parents as well?
That's not it's not the SSID here. Are you still seeing this on my screen? I never quite know if okay. That's the state student ID. So it's not a social security. It's just a state student ID for the student.
Okay.
Not a social security number. Yeah.
When I was researching this, I found that actually other states use social security numbers, I guess, instead of that. It seems safer to use a state school ID number instead of a social, which is great.
Yeah. Okay, good. And that was our plan to do that. And again, I don't know from a fiscal perspective if we would need the parent, Deanne didn't seem to mention that we would need a parent social number in order to generate the reimbursement. So I don't think that is necessary right now, but I certainly will follow up with Deanne on that question, but I don't believe so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's all I had.
Sorry, but might it make sense to spell that out? What that SSI, because people see that SS thing and they get all geeked out. They might not understand what that is.
Yes, good call. Thank you. Yeah. And then.
So Christy, is that a number that they also get that the school has? It's assigned at the school?
It is, and it would be because they have to turn in that either an evaluation report or an IEP. It would be with that information. So they would have that number to provide with that documentation. Yeah.
So just to add on to what Sue said, maybe we say that number would be available on your school papers or from your school district or just wherever, so they know.
And I'm trying to be very consistent in the language, like available from the resident school district, from the one that you would be going to, just for that consistency of language. Yeah, so thanks for that. And Sarah put a question in the chat, and I'm going to close this window We do have the bill up for eligibility for qualified children. Let me get back down to the next qualified here. Here we go. In between the ages of 5 and 19 on September 10th. So starting at age 5. You're correct, Sarah, for that question that you put in the chat. Yeah. Great. Right. And then I think that is the end of the application that we had to share with you all. And like I said, if we get to the point where we're able to test, hopefully very soon, we might reach out to this committee and ask you to put in some tests for us, or to join a call to follow up with that, so we can make sure that piece is working properly for us as we get ready to roll that out.
I just want to add in there too that
Yeah.
testing should be available next week. They're working on it for next week.
Great.
The 15th.
So if we'll be able to hopefully share out with the team and have you all maybe give us some feedback on that testing so we make sure it works smoothly, that would be wonderful. Great. Thanks, Whitney. Our next, the next bullet point here on our agenda is the ESA handbook review. And I've got that here for you all to take a quick peek at. And I apologize, it's on the screen. I will want to get this sent out to you. But I wanted to just show you sort of what we've got for the topics of this in the handbook. And we've got eligibility, how to participate, expenses, renewal, withdrawal or termination, termination process, FAQ, contact information, resources, and glossary. So these are sort of those big pieces that Katie Bloodgood has done an excellent job of pulling these items together for us based on what we've talked about is important, and also looking at other states. And Kira has also helped out with this. And we just got a draft together that we wanted to show you. So forgive the scroll, but the first thing that we have here is our introductory page talking about what it is. And then about you all and your work on this education savings account. We've got you here. And then we'll scroll down here to eligibility. So this is, again, coming back to that eligibility, just copied straight from the bill. Here's what the eligibility is. It's pretty clear in the bill what that is. So we've got that here. The define this further highlight, again, I think comes to exactly this question of students that weren't there for the previous year to be counted that school, and how are we going to kind of reconcile that? And again, also, homeschool students who hadn't been enrolled in a school, and how could they maybe enter into this program by putting in an intent as part of this application? Those are still some questions that we're grappling with here in finance, but I hope to have answers to those for you real soon. Eligible
Well,
public.
Is there anything to allow? I mean, I'm not sure. I know how money gets to the schools, but I'm not sure your fine-tune process. But it seems like if a student has been in a homeschool or is in another state, whatever, that OPI should be, you have a state pot of money that's dispersed based on A and B, but there's got to be a little extra money in there somewhere. I mean, the district needs to be reimbursed for the money you're going to take away from them. So I just want to make sure districts are covered, which I wish that this committee had been defined as having someone from a school district on here, because it seems like we have a lot of things that are going to impact school districts that we're guessing by goshing on.
Yeah. That's a great point, Jean. And in fact, even I could just in the meantime, reach out to some school districts maybe and see if some clerks would be able to join in. And then also our internal finance people, I'm hoping can join our next meeting to help us answer some of these questions as well. Absolutely.
Well, I'm also wondering if your legal person is going to go through this to make sure this all is legal.
Yes. Thanks, Sue. And exactly, absolutely. Yep. He's so Rick has already Rick Wooten, our legal counsel who's working on this, has drafted up a draft contract. And yes, we want to make sure that he sees as soon as Whitney has sort of that draft application ready to go, we're going to show it to him to make sure it kind of that it jives back and forth with those. You're exactly right. Yep. And good reminder.
The last bullet point, do you want to say student must not be currently enrolled in the resident school district? Because that might be, I don't know. It might be, again, might be confusing because it says eligible for public school enrollment. And are you saying that somebody, a parent that has a student that has attended the deaf blind school cannot?
Correct. Or the Pine Hills Correctional Facility. Yet they're funded differently. So that's why they are not eligible. If they're currently enrolled in it, right? Correct.
But a parent could make a decision to not have them attend and utilize this funding?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just really quickly curious, just out of like my own, I need to figure this out in my head aspect. So these are being federally like under the IDEA, but IDEA runs from ages 3 to 21. So I think that's where my like confusion is coming into play. Like we're following IDEA, but not for the age part of it. Is there a reason for that part, if I may ask?
Yep. For the public school eligibility, I believe, right? Because these are students would be entering public school at the age of 5 and through 19. So I think that's what it aligns up to. Hopefully that answers that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Catherine, I see your hand up there.
Yes. So the kids that are enrolled in the school for the deaf and blind, they're not eligible for this right now too. So does that mean they're not being counted in their school district's A and B funding?
Catherine, that is a great.
Then if their parents decided they wanted to take them out of the school for the deaf and blind, they wouldn't be eligible to enroll them in this program.
I think they would be. Well, this is a great question for me to ask our finance.
They'd be in the same loophole as homeschool or private placed students.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Good question. I'll follow up on that one. I've got the note here. Yeah.
That is, those are considered public schools.
They are.
You also said not be currently enrolled. So I guess somebody could make a decision to unenroll their student at that school or even at Pine Hills.
Yes. And then would they be eligible for this if they're no longer enrolled there? I think it was, And I'll confirm that though. That's a great question. Yep. Okay, so that's that section, and I'm going to scroll a little more, not to make anyone dizzy. Federal Individuals with Disabilities Act. These are the 13 designations that they will be on that application. The parents will be able to check it on the application. Also, it'll show up on their IEP or eligibility. So I don't think that one is just a list. Thank you for that. I'm going to keep scrolling, so look away for a second till I get to the next section here. How do parents and students participate and apply? We're required to notify OPI through an application. So I think we'll need to, I'm going to highlight this. We'll want to work on some language there. And then we will have our application information and the reimbursement process. We'll get this fleshed out more. So it looks like this needs a little bit more work on this section, but we've got this section to flesh this out some more. I'm going to scroll to the next page. And here's our eligible expenses. I would like to take a little bit of time to talk about this here. This is directly from the bill. And let's just take a quick look. This is things that we've talked about. All of these, I think, make sense to us. We've chatted about these a little bit before in our meetings. I think this is a good start to our eligible expenses. And this is, again, just taken right from the bill. So pretty straightforward. And this is where I think as we move forward as the steering committee and as Whitney is working with us and I know Whitney may need to jump off here pretty soon. So if you need to go, that's fine. Whitney, thanks so much for joining us this evening. But I just want to, point out that this will be as those reimbursements come in. We're a reimbursement model for now, so we'll get the reimbursement will be approved before payment is sent out. And it will need to fall within these eligible expenses. Now, it does say there may be some other expenses not included. That may be where we might need to come to this committee and say, hey, we got this request for this type of thing. Would we consider this eligible? And is this part of our eligibility or not? Someone had a hand up, or maybe not. Maybe I just saw it for a minute.
Yeah, I did.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
When it says electronic education program or course, does that include the state-ran digital campus?
The Montana Digital Academy. Yep, I believe that it would. If a parent were responsible to pay that, then a parent would need to pay that. I just feel like they usually run through the district. So, but if they had a sort of that private way for them to pay, then it would be an eligible expense. I think, yeah.
So should we have some reference in this section to say, because we say that last line in the first paragraph, may be accepted expenses. Should we say something in there anywhere about their IEP? Because, a child that doesn't need occupational therapy, for example, wouldn't be getting reimbursed for occupational therapy. So maybe all kids do. I didn't have an IEP with my children, but should it refer to that somewhere about how it should tie to what is needed for that child to succeed?
Yeah, because that would be identified in the ER, in the evaluation report, as to what their needs would be. And then those goals are written based on that ER. So yeah, you're right. If you can't just, I guess what you're saying is that you shouldn't be able to just go out and get physical therapy if it wasn't something that was identified in your ER and you had a goal written for your IEP.
Right. So I think that does two things, Sue. Oh, sorry, Jean, we were speaking at the same time there.
Well, I was just wondering if that should be like at the top to say all of these things down below should somehow, if they relate to your IEP, it'd be kind of the umbrella.
Well, and I think it does both, right? It kind of says, hey, expenses particular to your student's IEP within that, but then it also supports, other things that they might have something that's a little outside of it, but hey, in the IEP, it explains why. So here's that evidence. I think it kind of does both of those. I see John and Catherine both have their hands up. Oh no, John's just giving us the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Got it. Catherine, go ahead.
I'm going to be the voice of opposition because these IEPs are not going to be updated frequently if the parents are choosing to take their kids out of the public schools. So if these IEPs were created 2 years ago, they may not be reflecting current occupational therapy or speech goals or what the child currently needs or what the parents are seeing that the child currently needs. So they could be very outdated. And if we're limiting what the parent sees that the child needs, it may not be reflective of what the child needs currently.
Well, that's why I think, in the system, the evaluation report is the initial document that determines eligibility, and it determines what you are eligible for. So
those needs can change every single year, and the schools aren't going to want to do these evaluations for kids not enrolled every year.
But if you are, as a parent, want to have an evaluation done, you request that. I mean, that's how it's supposed to happen. It may not happen in your school, but that is what's supposed to be done. That's they are legally responsible for doing an evaluation if you've requested it. So if that's where everything is determined. And so, yes, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to request, you talk about it every 3 years. It doesn't have to be done every 3 years, but that's the most important thing that people can have done to make sure that they qualify and how they qualify. And they do assessments based on what you request, you and the team requests.
And I would also say that just, putting this here is just that reminder, like these items are to support your students' needs, and it's aligned to this, but it's also qualified school tuition, an educational program, curricular materials, tutoring. Those are also like, those are our accepted expenses. But just sort of, I think putting that bullet point there doesn't exclude these other items. As needed by the parent, if that makes sense. Oh, not sure if I was
I would just, if
articulating
we're
that
gonna
clearly.
limit it to what an IEP states, then we need to make sure that it's easy for the parents to have access to the school to get those evaluation reports.
Mhm.
Because in many of these rural communities, getting evaluations done is very difficult, and the schools just don't have the funding to have these evaluations done. Even though the laws require them to be done, it's very difficult. And so for parents to get
Right.
up-to-date evaluations and accurate evaluations to reflect the needs of these kids is very difficult. So when we put that kind of a restriction on, the parents are going to find it very difficult to get the needs of their kids met.
That's
Yeah, I
when
guess.
they call OPI.
Yes,
And you
that's
say,
They
I
find
need
that
this
just
done.
as
What do I do?
frustrating. The system is not a fairyland. It doesn't work as well as it maybe does for you. I'm saying in rural Montana, it does not work like that.
Well, and I guess I wonder then, to sort of, thinking about your comments here, what could we do for this? Because I don't look at this as an exclusionary, like that this is the only thing, like this is it. I feel like this is reminding, like, hey, it's moving towards these goals, moving towards the students' needs. But if a parent sends in some tutoring, and tutoring wasn't explicitly written in the IEP, that doesn't mean that the tutoring isn't an eligible expense. I guess that's what I'm kind of trying to understand.
So I guess my question to those
Yeah.
of you who are in the rural areas that don't have as much access is, how would you, what would be the best way for you to determine then what would be helpful for your child to meet educational goals that might not yet be identified? I mean, how do you decide, okay, the IEP was 3 years ago, but now I know that this would help? I mean, how are we going to determine that? I don't know. So can you let us know?
I could speak from those around me and my personal experiences. We have left the school system and we've created our own support system of private therapies, occupational therapy, speech therapists, special education therapists that are telling us the best ways to teach our child. And that includes curriculum and teaching aids and things that will best suit our child. We aren't just doing it on our own, flying by the seat of our pants, but our IEPs, like specifically for my son, they have goals that are so far below where he is at, saying things like how to identify his letters and numbers when he's actually reading. So to go off of what his IEP would state, which didn't actually assess him accurately at where his present levels were, would be ridiculous to try and meet his needs where they currently at. And I would say most of the families that have left the public school system, they're seeking help from outside sources. They're going to therapies and they have people and resources that are assisting them. So if they needed to document why they need a wiggle chair or why their child needed a like Orton Gilliam style curriculum for their child, they probably have a therapist or a professional that is recommending that, so they could document why they want to use that specific resource for their child. So even if an IEP doesn't state that that's what's the best avenue for their child to be using, there's something that is giving them that recommendation. So I wouldn't say that we have to restrict it to an IEP or evaluation report is saying it, but something is saying that they should use it. So if they can document a reason, I think that should be sufficient too. Because
Well,
if
and
they
I
can't
think,
get it from the school, they might have gone to another evaluation and gotten it.
right. And maybe this was wasn't thinking of this, but as we're getting in these receipts and in these, items for reimbursement. If it's a qualified school tuition, if there's a tuition fee that's to a qualified school, that's a reimbursable expense. If it's a tutoring, because the bill specifically says tutoring, that's a reimbursable expense. I didn't think that it would exclude, like, that all of these things had to be listed in the IEP for it to be an eligible expense. I just think that if it, in my mind, Catherine, I think I feel like I'm kind of agreeing with you in the sense that these are tuition or electronical educational program or curriculum materials or tutoring, or can include expenses aligned to the student's IEP. So to me, this was just one of the bullets here. All of it is of course aligned to support the student with special needs. That's what all of it is for, but not to be so narrow that it has to be bulleted in the IEP, unless I was missing that. But I felt like the legislators were pretty clearly outlining these are eligible expenses for students who are eligible in the program. Once they're eligible in the program, these are eligible expenses. So does that reassure you a little? Does that?
Absolutely. As long as
Okay.
that's not the only, like, it has to be in the IEP, that's
Yeah.
good for me.
Yeah. Does that make
As long as
sense?
we're not
Because
just restricting to it has to have been in an IEP. That
Right,
works
yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And I would like to support what Catherine is saying. Hi, everybody. This is Alba.
Hi,
and
Alba. Good to
just
see you.
adding to the IE part, I try to get an IE for a neuropsych eval, and that wait list for the neuropsych here in Billings is a 2-year wait list right now. So just adding to that, there could be a long wait list for those things. So just not making it exclusive just to that. I agree
Sure.
with Catherine and what she's saying.
Sure. Yeah. And any other hands up? I see a couple other hands up. Yeah, Clifton.
Yeah, I want to agree with Catherine as well. We live in a very rural area, and we are doing. I'm participating in this because I'm very interested in making sure that the goals that we've been advocating for our son get met. And if some of those goals didn't make it on his IEP, even though we tried so hard and went back and forth, it just was so hard that this gives me the freedom to do that.
Mhm.
Now, putting restrictions on these is good, but we got to think we're supplementing the entire learning process in the hands of the parents and the institutions that they decide to send their children to. When these vouchers and everything first came out, it was presented in Virginia. Virginians went, when they shut the schools down because they didn't like their school process at all, they shut all the schools down and started issuing out vouchers so that the parents could take their children other places. They went in and raided the schools and took chairs, took desks, everything that they needed. This is the proper way to handle the situation. If we're not happy with and we're not able to get those services, this is a way for us to do that, but in a positive way.
I like that, Clifton. I like that, idea of we're moving positively, right? Moving forward and how we can do this. And I think we're moving in that direction here. So yeah, I like that. Thanks for sharing that. So I think that leads us to, I find this eligible list pretty comprehensive. I don't know if there are things on here. I felt like this was a pretty comprehensive list that they included. A lot of it buckets a lot of items that parents can apply for this reimbursement for. But I think so if there's other things that you all are thinking, please share it with us, pop me an email. I'd like to send this draft out to you so you could, give me some specific feedback, give us some specific feedback on this. But this non-eligible expenses, I think, is a big one. And this is where other states have reported to us that they run into it's really can be kind of a tricky thing sometimes, a very challenging kind of to determine eligible and, ineligible, expenses. And so I'd like us to try to grapple with that just a little bit. For the televisions was a big one. That's one I've heard from other states that really televisions, there are, I believe, iPads, and there are certain electronics that are very helpful for therapies and things. But big screen televisions has been one that other states have kind of said, no, that we're having a harder time understanding like the therapeutic value of a large screen television, for example. So we made that suggestion here. Are there anything else that you all can think of for an ineligible expense that we would think?
Christy, I do have a list. If you would like, I could share
Yeah.
that
Oh, that'd be great,
Arizona
Katie.
that used. So
Thank you. Would you,
Um,
if you want to just screen share it, if you want to do that, or drop it in the chat,
Sure.
whatever's easier for you.
it's pretty long, so it might be easier to screen share. So just give me
Okay.
a minute.
Sounds good. I'll go ahead and stop my share here. And while she's doing that, I see Deanne has popped on. So Deanne, if you're available, we had one question kind of come up around A and B that I don't know if you know the answer to. So I'm gonna ask one of my experts here. So remind me to ask Deanne if she's able to stay on for a few minutes to answer that.
Do you guys see this list that I put up now?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
we
so
can.
this is the language, and I know you guys have referenced Arizona before, but this is some of the examples that Arizona gave for disallowed expenses.
Is there a way you can enlarge that? I'm not sure if I
Yeah, can you
am
zoom in
doing
a
something.
little?
Oh, okay, thank you.
There must have been some creative people if you're asking for pizza ovens and horses. I don't know.
I was
That's
thinking that with restaurants.
And a plane, a plane.
planes, automobiles, yeah, motorcycles, boats. And so this is, I think, really a place where we can sort of learn from other states, right? And I think that, does anyone have any disagreements with any of these items, or could we go ahead and put that in our handbook to get us started?
I think those are all appropriate to start with. The only one I could see being an issue in Montana is people maybe wanting to save fuel, because I believe in the bill it said transportation costs, and for rural Montana, fuel could be considered a transportation cost to get to the therapies.
Mm-hmm. There are, yes, I had that same thought.
And the bill did allow for transportation costs.
Yeah, so maybe we would take, or maybe we'd have
Unless
to
we're
be
gonna
more
go like with the IRS
specific.
allowable rate
Yeah.
per mileage and just eliminate the fuel reimbursement.
Yes, I think you're right. I think that perhaps it could be that, that mileage reimbursement for travel. A lot of families do have to travel an hour to get to a therapy or something, an hour there, an hour back. I mean, that's quite a few miles on the road. And so to be able to do that. So I wonder if we clarify that fuel. So thanks for highlighting that.
We do have to somehow allow for transportation since the bill
Mhm.
is allowing for that.
Yeah. Yep. Good call. Okay. All right. Well, I think we found a great place to start. So we'll get that put into that handbook for you all. Thanks, Katie, for sharing that.
Well,
Let's
Christy,
see.
maybe if we took fuel out there and under transportation, we added some clarifying language, you could be reimbursed for mileage on your own personal vehicle or something like that.
Yeah, transportation required for another. Yeah. Add specific reimbursement language here. Yeah, good call. I added that in there. I'm going to just put committee agreed to non-eligible list. So we'll add that in. Great. Wonderful. And then, all right, I'm going to keep scrolling on down. We will need to tackle how parents can renew and what that looks like. So let's think about that as a committee. Withdrawal and termination. Some of this was sort of is really outlined in the bill. So that was a kind of a nice way we just took that right from the bill. And the one thing that we were thinking of is kind of having a limit, and Deanne and Whitney and I have talked about this.
Share.
Oh,
Sorry, I took off my screen share.
Yes, you did, and it just didn't automatically pop into mine. There we go. Is that better? As you can see here, we do have to think about the renewal, what that looks like. I feel like that is much easier than the initial application. And so maybe it's just updating that contract, right? Every year they sign that new contract each year for that renewal, sign new contract. New contract. Question mark, kind of thinking about that is sort of making that as easy as possible for the parents. You know, if that just when their year is up, they get a new contract and they sign up again for the next year.
So Christy, remind me, does the contract have the estimated budget? Will they have to do an estimated budget?
The contract, gosh, Deanne, I don't know if you're listening in on this as to where that timing will come exactly out. But by the time we have that contract ready, we should know when they're looking in their e-grant system, they will know what their allotted amount is. So yes, would we be able to have that in time for the contract, Deanne, do you think?
Let's see, so the applications will close June 1st. So Whitney and I went through it this morning and thought by, we're gonna run this by Paul because he does the allocations, but hopefully we would have all the allocations by the end of June. And then we've got to have that out. We think we could get that out and allocated and uploaded in so that, you know, people can log in and allocate their budgets during July. Because the first school payment is in August and it's all got to be established and in place before that.
And we would have that information. We would know what that student is eligible for. So yeah, it will come
I
with
think
them.
July will have allowance amounts for students.
Yep. Yeah.
But parents need to have some sort of, like, I'm gonna need $200 for fuel reimbursement. They're gonna need that.
Yeah.
So the new, I would say new contract and amended budget or new budget, I would put budget in that renewal too, just to remind them.
Yeah, and updating the budget because it'll be the same cycle for that. We'll have to put it, you know, back into that same cycle if it's a mid-year, you know, the winter addition to the program as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. The withdrawal or termination, we have just these bullet points here that are taken from the bill. And it feels like, and this is part of their contract, if they decide to withdraw from the program or re-enroll their student in public schools, they would need to notify us, and that's as part of the contract. We've got the signed contract there. Knowingly misusing account funds, obviously, and knowingly, you know, those sort of obligations that parents have. We being a reimbursement, it makes that, you know, we get a receipt, we send money for a valid receipt, so that helps a little bit with that. But if it goes to a different format ever in the future, you know, that would be different. Then here's the termination process. We do need to talk about this appeal process, and I feel like that's a conversation with Rick, our legal counsel, just to kind of talk about what that appeal process looks like. If they, you know, if they're terminated from the program, that sort of thing, and also if they have an eligible expense that they're trying to get through that we say no to, would there need to be an appeal process for that also? And we would maybe put that up in that eligible and non-eligible expenses category as well. So we definitely need to add a little bit more here. I'm going to keep going. So frequently asked questions. Again, we just sort of popped these out there. I think that you all would be great at populating this frequently asked questions part, because I know you have a lot of them. You've been asking a lot of them. You get a lot of them from your peers and people in your community. So I think this is a great one for us to populate more as we move forward, and getting those answers carefully crafted. I think would be important. So I'm going to write that down as FAQ. Okay. I'm going to scroll just a little bit more. Don't want to make anyone seasick. Then we have our contact information and helpful resources for the bill. And I believe this is the end. We're at the end. Oh, and then it's the glossary. So those important, definition items, which a lot come from our own bill on this and the legislative and, what the words that they use and what that means. And we'll have that here, but we welcome you to add suggestions to that glossary as well. So here's a look at that handbook. It's coming right along. And I think I'm trying to think the best way to really have you all work on this. I thought the subcommittee for the application worked really well when we had just a group of people who were willing to meet. Is there anyone who's willing to meet next week, maybe to go more closely over this handbook? I could send you the handbook, you could take some notes, and then we could meet together to really flesh that out. And so I see Clifton, yes, I'm going to write down these names so I can follow up with an email to you all. Clifton, Catherine, Walter. Sue, I see your hand up. Are you ready for the hand? Are you able to be part of the handbook committee?
Yeah, sure. I had another question too.
Oh,
but
gotcha. I'll put you down for that and then go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, okay. So this glossary, it says qualified school and it says are you talking about a school that you would be paying tuition to?
Yes, that would be that tuition reimbursement. I don't want to scroll up, but it would be that qualified tuition reimbursement. It would be one of these non-public schools. Yeah.
Okay. Can you say qualified? I guess to me, it's a little confusing. Qualified school that you would be paying. I'm just saying this. I'm thinking what you're trying to say is that tuition would be paid to the tuition would be paid to this kind of a school.
That charges tuition. It is a qualified school. I'm going to highlight that because that's not exactly the right wording, but it kind of, Sue, to get to your note there, we can refine that. Thank you for that. That's a good call.
And you don't require there's no requirements for the type of teachers.
Right.
They don't have to have a teaching degree.
It looks like as long as it meets the requirements for Montana non-public schools, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the committee could work on this, but I think it seems like that the section that you had withdrawal and termination in the same section, and then you had a more clarifying on termination of the process. I would think withdrawal would be like withdrawal from this program to go back to a public school that section should be enhanced. I mean, I think we talked about whether or not they could do that, come into it for a month and then quit. Does it need to be quarterly, half year? We talked about that.
Correct.
And again, they've got just the process. They're going to have to work with their resident school district and stuff. That needs to be elaborated upon.
I think you're exactly right. And and Dan, since Dan has popped on, part of that is kind of thinking about this as maybe in half parts of the year, right? That students would, thanks, John, that students would, we would reimburse for half tuition through half the year, and then the other half of the year they'd get the rest, rather than all at once necessarily, in case there is a change in their participation in the program. So kind of monitoring that, I think, is we would want to have that in there as part of those expenses. Like you'll get eligible for half of the amount each semester, so to speak, or each half a year kind of thing. Yeah, we've discussed that, I think, exactly to address that. But I do agree with you that the withdrawal and termination will need to clarify a little bit more. And I'm going to invite, for those of you in this handbook committee, I'll invite our legal counsel to join us for this one, because as we're kind of crafting some of these, I think he'd have a great perspective on some of that. So I'll see if he'll be available for that. Deanne, did you have a question? Did I see your hand come up, or was I just imagining?
No question. I just was listening to you, and you said everything I was going to add, so I muted myself again.
Oh, perfect. Great minds again, Deanne. We've done that a couple of times today. And then, Deanne, there's one question that came up, and this may be more where we need to grapple a little bit more with our finance department, but sort of when we're thinking about that A and B funding, right? And we know that A and B funding is a little bit, is a little retroactive, is back, based on the school count, the fall, and spring counts from the year before. So if a student is just new to the district or is coming in from kindergarten, or our homeschool students who right now aren't eligible, but is there a way that we can get them to count for A and B somewhere so that they could be eligible, kind of questions happening? How does that work for these new students to a district, or new student to Montana, or new to kindergarten that haven't been counted for A and B before? Do you have a quick answer for that question?
On the funding?
Yeah, on the funding. For example,
Well, that-
so because our eligible kiddos,
So I was reading that this morning,
yeah,
and I have not found in the bill, because it tells OPI's directive in this bill. Let me get down to that page.
You
It's
want me to move?
true.
Is this the part you need me to look at here? Was counted during the previous school year for purposes of school district A and B funding.
Yes, so that part's easy. The school will already have been funded for it.
Mhm.
But there was something, let me find. It
And
talked about starting
and
in
B.
August, that we have to notify the districts of the
Yep.
participating kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find where I highlighted it. I gotta find a color here. I'm trying to scroll too fast. But it didn't really sound like
Mm-hmm.
it mattered, for those kids. We still notify their resident district,
Yep.
and they monthly, after they receive their A and B payment, they
Yeah.
send us back the funding for that child. And
Yep.
I that's how I've read it. I've tried to look and make sure
Yep.
that that's really what I'm seeing,
Okay.
but
So it
that we
runs.
simply notify them, these are the kids in your
Yeah,
district.
these are exceptions to, these couple of exceptions are exceptions to having been counted the prior year for A and B, and it's these couple of exceptions here that are listed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Deanna, the real question is, if you have a kindergarten student coming in or somebody who just moved into the district, the school district doesn't really have any A and B monies that they are going to receive from OPI in their August payment for those children. So aren't we penalizing a school district with money they don't have?
I would say that the language in the bill, because here, I found my language.
Oh, yeah.
Following receipt of a signed contract, superintendent of public instruction shall notify the resident school district of the qualifying student's participation. Beginning with the next distribution,
Yeah.
months August through May, the resident school district shall remit the amount calculated. So as I read it,
Mm-hmm.
that would be
Right, I can see that the legislation is
Mhm,
saying they have to pay it. What I'm saying is you're
Yeah.
penalizing a district with money they're never gonna get.
so that's how I read the bill.
Yeah.
Is
It would be
why
the
it's
same as
kind
if
of
a family of
simple, though.
5 moved into the school district halfway through the year. The school would still have to educate those 5 new students.
It's,
So
it
it would
is,
be the
that
same.
is how it runs, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And
So the district is gonna get the money for those kids the next year because now they're in there. Okay.
yeah, yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I don't see anything that changes this structure from how it's currently counted.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Deanne, for that clarification. I appreciate you finding that language for me in the bill.
I've read this bill a lot today.
All right, I'm gonna pop back. I think that's it. I've got a subcommittee ready to go on the handbook. We're gonna meet on that. I'm excited. Thank you for volunteering for that. Expect an email follow-up from me. Here is, and the next thing is the parent interest survey. And Kira, I'm not sure if Kira's still on. She had taken some of what we had talked about in the past, and she's gotten some survey questions ready to go. She's put in a request to get the survey created, but she wanted to share with you, get a little feedback from this parent survey so we can get it sent to you so that you can send it out to your peers, to people in your communities, to your networks. This is simply the parent interest survey that sort of says, hey, are you interested in applying for this ESA? Let us know. So Kira, if you wanted to share, I don't know if it's easier for you to share your screen.
Yep, I can definitely do that. Let me just pull it up now. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
You might just need to make it a
So-
little bit bigger on the screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Looks good though.
Let me see here. Okay, how about that? So it's, I mean, pretty straightforward. We've got a brief description of what the education savings account is, and then the purpose of the survey, along with these questions. And mind you, these are just to gather information. It's just a yes/no survey to help us. So are you the parent, guardian of a special needs child? Yes or no? Are you interested in applying? Yes or no? Does anyone have any questions about the questions?
Well, do you want to maybe further clarify that first question? Are you the parent guardian of a child that has been determined to be eligible for special education or that has qualified? I'm not, you don't have to use my words, but I think that's just kind of open-ended. You know what I mean?
Sort of maybe
Yeah,
just
they
put
need
the
Yeah.
word
to
eligible
IDA.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let
And
me
then the
see
other one I
here.
would think you might want to ask, what's your resident school district or under the public school?
That's not a bad idea to what their resident school district is to give us an idea where these students would
Right.
be.
Okay, so add a question then, is that what you're saying of what is your resident school district?
Well, here where it says, did your child attend public school last year, you could put it right in there or right after that. What is your resident school district?
Okay,
Do you want to ask maybe too if they have attended the previous year for at least 45 days and also if they're entering kinder, those kind of questions? I'm not sure if you want to ask to see if that's a qualifying candidate.
I'm not sure if we have to go quite as specific because we have the actual school year listed. We could definitely consider
I
doing
see it.
that.
You're right. I see it now. Thank you.
No problem. And then going back to the parent guardian of a special needs child, what do you guys suggest that we change on the wording for that then?
I wonder
Well,
if
the child, oh, sorry.
Sue, I was just going to say, Clifton popped in the chat. Does your child have an IEP? So I wonder, are you the parent or guardian of a special needs child? Does your child have an IEP? It kind of gets to that eligibility potentially. It's not perfect, but I wonder if we just.
Yeah, and you're gonna be, this is just an initial thing.
Yeah.
This is not a heavy duty piece of information because you're gonna have to collect all that data anyway, right? All that. Yeah.
Can you just go back to the language are you a parent of a child who's been identified as a child with a disability? They wouldn't even have to have an IEP.
Yes, and that's people first language, so that sounds better.
Is that what we're going for?
Identified with a disability, not with
Yeah,
special
with
needs.
the disability
Okay,
to make it,
thank you.
yeah.
I
And
knew
if
I
we
didn't
can-
have that right, so I was waiting for the correction.
And then if we can spell out ESA as educational savings account.
Okay.
So I wonder if in that first paragraph, even though it's in the bill and all, if we might want to say eligible for reimbursement of allowable educational expenses outside of the resident school district or something. I mean, it isn't real clear there that they could, you know, put them in a different school. We might want to link to the legislation too, to let them read it. I don't know. Maybe that's what that does. HB 393 link.
Yes,
Looks
it
like
does.
Okay. I just wondered if they understand what this educational savings account is for. It's like, it's not to save them for college or, you know, it's to be reimbursed or something. I don't know if it's clear enough at all.
Well, and you can't see it, but what we're trying to do, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to yet, but we're trying to link, this is the OPI ESA page, and we're hoping to link this directly at the bottom of the survey for additional resources.
I agree. I think at the top, it should have something that says that this is for kids not enrolled in public school for reimbursable expenses.
Yeah, maybe just even at the back of that, the last sentence says maybe eligible for reimbursement of allowable education for eligible students not currently enrolled in public school or something like that. For eligible students. Yeah, school year. Yeah. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I think that kind of eliminates a little bit more
confusion. Yeah, I agree.
And then we have the questions, you know, did your child attend during the 2023 to 2024?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I wouldn't make it much longer than this, as just sort of this intro, you know, gathering information. We don't want it to be arduous for parents. We just want to try to maybe get a feel for who is interested and where they're coming from and how many parents might be interested in applying for this program. And so I think that keeping it not too long is important for this.
Right? We can't really see the bottom, but I'm assuming that you're going to have an email or something that we could send them additional information or something.
Yep.
I had one additional question. It might be loaded, but it might be helpful as well. Is if a parent is thinking about doing this, that means that they're taking their child completely out of school. Would it help to have a question is, do you have a education, like a non-public education location identified? Or I don't know how to word that, but seeing if they actually have a plan. If they're going to use these funds, they should have a plan on which they're going to use them. And if we're doing a survey to see how many parents actually want to use this, have they already identified how they plan to use it?
And I think, sorry, I was just going to say, we had a question in here, kind of seeing if parents wanted more information, but we tied in, and I don't know if this helps or not, but do you want more information about organizations that offer support for parents of students with disabilities?
Yeah, when I read that, I don't think it didn't make me think like as a parent, I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, okay, it's an education savings account, but where in my area would I use it? I guess that's where I would look to that question. It might be able to answer it, but also if the parent was serious to actually take that huge leap to start either partially educating their child with a tuition that comes from either curriculum and other things that are aside from it, that's a huge feat to see if they actually want to, like, this is a question to them. Is this something, if they're going to participate in the program, are they set up for it?
I think like what you're saying would be like, do you plan on, and maybe like tabs they can check off, like homeschooling, private schooling, and maybe like a other where they could just write in what their plan is.
Correct. Like, or do they have a plan? Do they
That
have a
sounds
plan
good.
to pull their kid, even if ESA isn't available, because it is being litigated? And it would be nice to know if there are parents that have a plan already, regardless if ESA is available.
Maybe that would be better suited for the application, like not necessarily the survey.
Yeah, I was just thinking as Clifton was saying that. So when you're going to have people fill this out, are they going to know that it's in litigation, that it might not come to fruition? That's kind of a touchy subject, but you would get people's hopes up, sort of their hopes up, even though it's not very much money. And then, I don't know. Just thinking that as you said that.
Which, going back to the ESA page for OPI, we are trying to keep it updated with the most up-to-date information available, which is part of the reason we're trying to include the link, because truly this is just a survey. So we're trying to give them some information, but
Does that page have a dollar amount? Does it say somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 or something? Because somebody might think they're going to get $20,000 bucks. I just want, does the homepage have a little bit of a dollar amount on it, or a category of money? Or
I don't know. Let's see what we don't, if we're gonna put a range on there, I'd like to verify the range first based on Paul's numbers.
yes. So this is the education savings account homepage. But like I said, with the survey, we just want it to be, what it is, not an application.
That's helpful. And where does it say about the litigation? I don't see that on there. It says there. It doesn't say that on there, right? It does or it doesn't?
No, we don't have that on here, but this is a great question for me to circle with Rick to see especially what we should have on that, the application going forward. And, as of right now, it's business as usual. So, but that's a great question for our legal counsel here.
Maybe like a disclaimer at the bottom.
Hey guys, I might suggest maybe having a link that goes like updates on the lawsuit here, and it can just go to a page that you update, with a PDF or something, and it can say no new information at this point. And then when information comes up, you can drop it in there. That way you kind of keep it active, but just a nice button on that page where people can click.
Yeah, I'll talk to our legal counsel about that.
So going back to the survey, does anyone have anything else?
I really think on the survey, you should take the question, do you need assistance with getting kids out of public school off? because you're opening up a whole door of questions from people that you really don't want to be answering.
Well, and the purpose of the survey is really just to see who might be interested in this. And so, and really, like, I think probably less questions is going to
They'll
get
be
us
asking
more information on that. Yeah, right. For this particular survey, for sure.
I get that. I was bringing it up because it to me, I just, as a parent, I feel very hesitant. I'm actually seriously contemplating taking advantage of the ESA. That's why I participated. But I am very also concerned because it is in litigation. If it goes away, that will leave me out hanging. Now I'm stuck having to go right back to square one.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point for that information. I mean, I keep you all updated here, every month we do that update, any more information, but thanks very much for sharing that. Yeah.
So
it's
it's the only way you
like the application or in the contract or somewhere to make sure they have a plan, but I don't think it should be on this.
Yeah.
Are we the only source? How are you going to distribute this? I mean, are we the only, you're expecting us to send it to some people that we might think are interested, but how else?
Absolutely. And that's a really great question. For sure, when we get this link out, we're going to share it with you for you to send out. We're going to put it in our Compass, which is our sort of monthly newsletter that goes out to the field. We'll have it posted on this ESA website as well. So anyone who visits the website, the link will be there as well. So we're going to try to broaden it out as best we can, for sure. Kira, I know, has a lot of contact with groups and parent groups, so she'll reach out to those parent groups. Our guest, I know sometimes we have some guests who come in and listen in on our ESA steering committee meetings. Those guests also have reaches out to parent groups around the state, so we'll work with we'll rely with that to share that word out, but we also will have it posted and share it in our communications out as well. Well, we have done it again. We have come to the end of our time together. So I'm going to go back to our agenda. And I had one thought that I had was I made this time to start at 4:30. And I know that if we could meet at 4 o'clock, that might just get us moving a little bit earlier and out of the meeting before dinner time too much. Would 4 o'clock work for everyone on the call, or do we need to keep it at 4:30? We can totally keep it at 4:30. I just thought that if we started at 4, we might be able to wrap up a little earlier to help with some of those dinner time preparations for everyone. Can you give me kind of a thumbs up? Would 4 o'clock work for us to start our next month, which is in May, meeting? Looks like I'm seeing thumbs up, thumbs up. Got some thumbs up. Looks like. All right. Well, then what I'm going to do is update that for the 4 o'clock time for the next meeting. And if you get delayed and jump in a little bit later, we'll welcome you when you can join in. But let's try that. That kind of gets everyone out a little bit earlier, maybe, and not quite so close to that dinner time, which is sometimes challenging. So we'll start it at 4 o'clock next month. In the meantime, my subcommittee for the handbook, I will send that out to you in the next day or two. We'll plan for a meeting next week to get that going. When we have our finalized application for you to look at and maybe do some testing, you'll get an email from me. And then also we have the parent survey that we'll be sending out. We knew that this was going to be our busy time. We're heading into this opening. We knew it was going to get busy. I appreciate all your work. We're going to get a little bit busier before we calm down here with this committee, but we appreciate your work, your attentiveness, and your feedback on everything. If there's nothing else, I'll hang on for a few minutes, but otherwise, have a great night, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thanks. I just want to clarify, so that handbook group is next week, and will that be at 4?
We could do it at 4 o'clock next Monday if that works for the group. Okay. Yep, I see some nods. We'll try for 4 next Monday then. Thanks, everyone.
Also,
Thank you.
sorry, I put this in the chat, but is Deanne, you said that you did a lot of reading of the bill. Would I just have some, sorry, I have a lot of questions about the post-secondary part. Would I be able to call you and talk to you about that?
You know, I can try. I didn't read. Yes. Yeah, we
Sue-
can do that sometime.
And Sue, you know what? One thing is, if you're
Maybe-
gonna join in the handbook, I'm gonna invite Rick Wooten, our legal counsel,
Oh, okay.
to be there. So he might be a great one. And I did invite Representative, she wasn't available for this meeting, just FYI. I'll keep inviting her though, to see if we can have her pop in as well.
Okay, so just
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
Just wait on
But
that.
yeah, so, and Sue, if you want to type up some questions and send them to me, I can get them to Rick so he can get thoughtful answers for us if need be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely, anytime. All right,